Awesome. Thank you, Andre. Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another awesome community event of product people. Today's session is about improving your PM skills through prioritization, documentation, and stakeholder management. It will be presented by Jonathan Epstein. And as a startup lover myself, as an associate product manager, I myself am very excited and curious to learn more about it. Before I hand over the presentation to him, let me quickly introduce myself as well as product people. So I'm Mashal Malik, your host today on behalf of product people. I have an experience of 3+ years in product management, business analysis, and quality assurance. I've worked with different product teams of B2C and B2B products. And now I'm fortunate enough to get more experience with the amazing product people. And I think you must be curious why product people is amazing. So I'll tell you a bit about product people. We help companies discover and deliver great products faster. And we do that in 2 ways. Number one, we manage all the unglamorous work of product managers on an interim basis, which takes usually 3 months to 1 year or more, depending on the contract. Also, we have a community of 14,000 people, actually even more now. We create events and share knowledge generously with the community. So I thank you, every one of you, for being a part of it. So if you or any one of you who is in need of our services, please remember we're always here to help, and we're always happy to help. Furthermore, together with you, we conduct these weekly meetings. And today, like always, we have a guest who will talk us about an exciting subject from product management world. Discussion will be followed by a Q&A session and a friendly networking event in the comments, to which you're all dearly invited. And before I pass on the torch to Jonathan, we have some icebreaker questions for you, and we like to hear about the topic from you. So I'll just read the questions for you. And for those who are on Zoom, you can see a pop-up which will appear, which has, I think, is there. And the ones who are watching on other platforms, please feel free to share your answers in the comments. So question number 1, what is the most important skills for a product manager? Do you think it's prioritization skills, stakeholder management, leadership, problem solving, or communication skills? You can choose any one of these options, or maybe you can choose more than one. Second question, how good are you at prioritizing? So here you can choose A, B, C, and D, depending on how you think you are at prioritizing tasks while you're performing your job as a product manager. And while you're answering the questions, I'm actually curious to see what people answer. And I already see a few answers. Those who haven't answered yet, there's still some time. Well, if I were to answer these questions, I would say that for question number 1, problem solving is the most important skill of product manager, because if you're able to do that, then you cover all other aspects of it as well. But we'll see what Jonathan has to say about it and what the answers are. Okay, we've got the answers. So yes, most of the people have said that prioritization skills are important, followed by stakeholder management. And for the second question, so the audience says that we are doing the best we can. So this is a good place for you to start. I think Jonathan would be able to help you out through this community session. Okay, thank you for sharing your answers. And with that, I will now like to introduce Jonathan Epstein, who is the group product manager at FreeNow. This event is put on in partnership with FreeNow. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us today. We are all very excited to learn about the topic because we as product managers are always doing our best to prioritize the right task while making sure that all the stakeholders are aligned and happy. We are very much looking forward to your presentation, and you have the stage. Please feel free to share your screen.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Yeah, looking forward to the presentation. I'll try to keep it a bit brief, so there's plenty of room also for a Q&A, and also a bit entertaining as well, since I know it's 6:30, at least in Berlin. Yeah, I'm sure some people are hungry and all that, so I'll definitely try to make sure that it's also succinct and good there. Please maybe just do me a favor and let me know if you all can see my screen, if you're able to see the full presentation. Maybe just with like if someone can say yes.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so maybe just to begin with, I want to just set up the fact that I think for myself and also for a lot of other product managers out there, there's a lot of information out there in general, whether it's on Medium, whether it's on Product People, whether it's on Product School, et cetera, et cetera. And I think sometimes there's so much information that you don't know necessarily how to take action on it. And so for this presentation, I really wanted just to focus on three different components of product management that I think are, one, super important, but also just to show some very concrete methods that I've picked up along the way to really help you up your skills. And those will focus on prioritization, documentation, and stakeholder management. But before kind of getting started, yeah, again, I'm Jonathan. I'm a growth product manager at Free Now. I've been there for around 5 months, and in total, I have around 5 years of product management experience. Before that, a little bit about my history there. So I was working at Bonial, which has a mobile app called Kaufda, which is like one of the leading B2B2C drive to store mobile apps out there in Germany, and really focusing on helping users save money. From there, then I kind of went into the dating space, which is also super interesting, and also worked for a company in Berlin called Spark Networks, and they really focus much more on niche dating applications. It's like Christian Mingle and JDate. It's like Jewish dating there as well. And then for the past 5 months, I've been working at Free Now, which for those that don't know, started off pretty much almost as like a taxi ordering service on your phone. Now it's really expanded into being able to hail a taxi, hail a PHV, hail any of those types, as well as then kind of becoming a super app in the sense of you can also get scooters there. You can also have car sharing and be able to unlock bicycles to pretty much get from point A to point B. So also super exciting, super interesting, and very happy to be there. And with that, I kind of can just go through the agenda as well. Again, focusing on prioritization, kind of breaking it into weighted scorecards, and then also RICE methodology, documentation, how to really structure some Confluence pages, and also why that's important, and then also how to really lead in a concrete way, better meetings with stakeholders, as well as creating actionables from those. And then last but not least, really letting time for a Q&A as well. Yeah. So really, before we begin, I also kind of want to explain why I also chose some of these three topics there, because obviously I think they're very much aligned, and any website you go to will say these are some of the key components. For me, though, I think what's really important is obviously one of our main jobs is to be able to prioritize. How do we do that? There's so many methods to prioritization, and so that's why I really wanted to focus on how to make it much more concrete, and then from that, the next step is, okay, what do you do with that prioritized, let's say, roadmap or prioritized feature list or backlog or whatever? You don't just leave it there, right? You need to also have it documented down. You need to actually have follow-ups with everything so that you can refer back to it, so that it's clear for not only your stakeholders, or for your head of, or for the CEO, but also for your engineers as well. And then from that, how actually pivotal it is to be able to have the proper documentation that then allows you better to align with your stakeholders and to kind of create this synergy between product and tech, obviously, and then the stakeholders as well. So that you're really able to drive your vision, you're able to execute, you're able to get everyone to buy into it, so that you can obviously deliver a feature or a product that brings value for the company and also for the end user as well, and how this all kind of flows into each other in a little triangle there. So first, kind of starting off with prioritization. Again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different frameworks from the Kano model to story mapping to Moscow, value, first complexity, rice, et cetera, et cetera. But what I really wanted to kind of pinpoint is like why weighted scorecards are super helpful and interesting, and also rice. So which I'll get into more details in a little bit. But for me, again, the reason why I've really focused on these is for these kind of four factors. It really helps to provide a quantitative and relatively objective approach to prioritization. You're able then to apply a number to it, whether it's weighted or not. You're able to apply a number to these different feature sets or problem statements, and being able to see, okay, which is actually more helpful for right now, which is more impactful, which brings more value to the product and to the organization in general. Once you have that, then I will also show a way how it makes it very clear to visualize the priorities. And also the reason why this is quite helpful is one, just makes it easy to look at, obviously more consumable, but also in the sense of when you're dealing with others, whether it's engineers, CEO, stakeholder, other product people, that you can show very quickly and simply and easily, this is why we're focusing on this and not on this, or this is why this is up here and this other feature might be further down. Again, this is also enabling like a 360-degree view on everything, so very holistic, which I'll get into when I'm going through the weighted scorecard and also RICE methodology. And again, it's a very easy reference point for everyone in terms of what's being worked on, what's not, what made the cut, what didn't. And this doesn't just apply to, let's say, on quarters, on roadmaps, but also when it comes to a product backlog or even a discovery backlog. You can kind of use this for multiple different approaches. So before getting started, I think these are also very key to know. So really understanding the OKRs that you have for that quarter. So what's the objective? What is it that you're trying to focus on? Is it about user growth? Is it about retention? Is it about stabling the underlying architecture? What is it? And then from that, that can then inform, okay, here are the features that you're really trying to work on there and giving the impact for each one of those. Then obviously knowing the data. I think that's something that everyone talks about quite extensively, especially with product, but it's something that you have to know off the top of your head immediately so that you're also able to compare apples to oranges and say, okay, this feature X might, as we've seen in the past, has this uplift of this percent. And we know if we iterate on top of that, we expect this versus other one. Moreover, then working into understanding the scope. So not every feature is created equally, but also understanding how large of a project is it, how large of a feature is it, when does milestone 1 end and milestone 2 stop, just to give a better understanding also of what's the likelihood of actually being able to achieve it. And then also lastly, really understanding how you're scoring things. And I'll get into much more detail on that because there's a few different ways to do it. And I think it's also very helpful there. So here's just kind of an example of a weighted scorecard. I left out some of the features there just for more privacy sake in terms of that. But the reason why I'm kind of focusing on this is, to me at least, this gives a very, very detailed, concrete, relatively concrete breakdown of how you can go about really prioritizing and scoring different ideas and different topics. And what's also very valuable here is for, let's say, these values, you have different criteria or different criteria that you're really looking at. And these are obviously related to your OKRs. So user experience can be one, revenue might be another, technical improvements might be another, and then ease as well, or complexity is another. And from these, then you're also able to attach weights to it. So maybe, for example, the company that you're working at really wants to increase revenue. So you know that any objective that you have or any initiative that you have that's tied to revenue should have a higher weight because that's the direction that you want to go in. Obviously, user experience, technical improvements, they're all connected to it. But at times you need to be able to make that clear distinction. One extra thing too that I think is very, very, very helpful and very important is when you're also creating this scorecard, you can obviously start on your own level and you have a backlog or there's other ideas, there's discovery, put it there, start to maybe give some scores to it and some weight to it. But it's also really pivotal and really important to immediately also involve other stakeholders there and to agree upon the weight that you're kind of providing for each one of them, as well as into some sense of a score as well. so that at the end, once you've gone through all this and you say, okay, from this 10 or 15 that we have, we're going to choose 3, everyone is already aligned. Additionally, it's very important to also include the engineers quite early on, not just for the complexity sake of, okay, how difficult might this be, but also this helps to provide the context of why maybe there's one feature and not another feature. Because at the end of the day, the engineers are really the ones that know everything the best, and they also have really great ideas, but it's good to show the holistic view on it so they understand why they're also working on this and what the impact might be. So then kind of going from this spreadsheet, which, let's face it, sometimes spreadsheets are not always the easiest to digest, you can just kind of create this very simple bubble chart here. And from this bubble chart, you have like an instant snapshot of, okay, on the x-axis is impact, the y-axis is complexity. Here are the features that are relatively high impact, somewhat low complexity. Let's go with those. And it just makes it very easy to pick and choose. Moreover, this is kind of one other way in which you can also really try to objectively assign values to different scores. So a lot of engineers will use, when they're giving estimations, they will use the Fibonacci sequence. And this is also quite a nice, handy way to be able to say, is this a 1 or a 5 or an 8 or a 21? It's quite helpful there. One quick thing also to this is that if you go onto Google, I'm not inventing this by any means, I just think it's actually somewhat difficult to find at times. You go to Google, you can search for weighted scorecards, Coursera, and you'll have this somewhat old man, very boring video, but very, very, very helpful when it comes to how to set them up and also why they're really important. So I can highly recommend that. It might not be as glamorous as some other websites or anything like that, but it's very, very, very helpful when it comes to prioritization. One more thing, though, is obviously RICE. So here I think it's, I'm going to go into a little bit how we're doing it at Free Now, which I think is actually super interesting and also very, let's say, quantifiable. And as you can see, quantified is repeated a lot. So on the reach side, quantified as the share of customers who will actually be affected within a year, the impact quantified based on UX, KPI, financial, legal considerations. Confidence, again, quantified based on the level of validation, and ease, quantified again by the PM and EM according to complexity. So this is, I'm going to go through kind of briefly, just for the sake of time, how each one of these components here of RICE are a little bit, able to be concretized in a more, let's say, robust way than just kind of arbitrarily assigning numbers to things, right? So again, on the reach side, it's about actually affected. And here's like a really good example is we have this thing, this feature, okay, edit destination, because we're also ride hailing, is used by 1% of the customers, and a proposed improvement could likely increase this so that the usage becomes 10%. Then the score should be 1, right? The reason why is because it's actually only this 10% of customers that are going to be impacted. It's not the total 100%. So when you're saying, oh, look, we have this 9 percentage point increase there, yes, that's great. But that's what we're expecting, but the reach itself is still relatively low. Kind of moving forward then into the impact. And again, I'm just going to keep it somewhat on a high level here. We can kind of open it up for the Q&A, and I'll just focus on the 9 through 10, the 5 through 6, and the 1 through 2. But kind of when determining impact, 9 through 10, super simple, straightforward. It's a must-win opportunity or problem, which is existential to the future of the market or the company. Or it can also be from a legal perspective as well, routinely enforce compliance issues. But it really can break down the company there. From the 5 to 6, problem or opportunity significantly affecting user experience and common user flows. It's a problem or opportunity with the potential financial saving or generation of, for this example, 500,000 plus. And there's perhaps, for example, an inadequate workaround potential. And last but not least, the 1 through 2, which is obviously the least amount of impact, is just improving UX in rare use cases or a minor glitch or some sort of minor automation or improvement there. So again, we're able then to see how we're kind of quantifying each of these scores and what those really mean and giving descriptions to a 9 through 10 versus a 7 through 8 versus a 3 through 4. Again, on the confidence side, and this is actually, I think, something that I've in the past also struggled quite a bit with of, well, what does confidence mean? Like, okay, we're confident it's going to work. We're confident it's going to like be released. What is it? So here again, on the 9 through 10, It's evidence of a problem to be solved supported by statistically significant result of a primary metric in an experiment. Meaning, you've done an experiment, you've done MVP, you've launched a POC, whatever, and you have the data in, and you're seeing this positive, statistically significant result, and you want to build off on that. That is super. You have a very high confidence level because you have the data that's already supporting that. On the 5 through 6 level, a user survey with representative sample size evidencing a problem. So for example, let's say that in Free Now, we want to do a feature that will improve people placing orders for a taxi, for example. Well, we might do a survey to a representative amount of people, and we might find out that whatever 80% are saying yes, I just don't know how to actually place the order. That gives us a direction to go towards and a problem statement to work on. And then from there, we can say, we know that this is the issue here. What kind of feature can we make to solve this? And will that solve that? And we're able to base it off of this survey there. And then on the 1 through 2 level, again, it can be anecdotal. Maybe someone's worked at a similar company and they say, oh, this is how we do it. Very little confidence, so to say, there when it comes to a pure score. And last but not least, again, from the ease perspective, it's quite straightforward. If it's going to have any business as usual, product launch or feature extension, which doesn't significantly impact roadmaps. On the 5 through 6 level, again, you might impact other teams as well. And then on the 1 through 2, super complex initiative, going to dominate every single domain, might not be solvable really. So those are 2 different ways that have been very helpful for me to be able to concretely prioritize initiatives, backlog items, etc., as well as then to already start to keep everyone in the loop as well. And here's also just a quick example of a RISE scorecard. Again, a spreadsheet, not all that glamorous, but also quite helpful there as well. So what I'd like to do is, we talked a bit about prioritization. Now I want to move a little bit into this documentation aspect. And so again, why is it so important? I'm sure a lot of you that are in product right now, I can almost guarantee it, there's going to be Jira tickets everywhere, there's going to be Google Docs everywhere, there's going to be spreadsheets everywhere, there's going to be newsletters everywhere, PowerPoints everywhere, everything is everywhere, right? Guarantee if you write to someone, hey, can you send this to me? It will take them 15 minutes, give or take, to go find it, right? So for me, I think it's really important to have everything in one place. It keeps it centralized, enables the PM to stay organized. It gains trust from engineers and stakeholders, and it makes alignment much easier, and you can always refer back to it. And again, I really want to maybe focus in on this gaining trust from engineers and stakeholders. One of our jobs as product, in addition to problem solving, in addition to making our choices and all of that, is you have a product vision, obviously, but you need to also then work with a bunch of varying people to achieve that vision. And in order for that to really happen, yes, you have to communicate very well, but you need to have that trust as well there. And so from my experience, what I've seen, having the everything documented in one place and being able to refer back to that, repeating, but showing to the stakeholder, whomever, hey, this is where it is, feel free to find it, builds that trust so that you can align better and then drive the features that you need to really get to that product vision. Excuse me. So here are just some quick tips on really how to document. I'll go through a few of them, but it's a lot about just kind of creating hierarchies to organize it, providing the right links, documenting the initiatives, documenting A/B tests, and all of this. I know this sounds quite boring, and the fact is, it is not the most glamorous part, but it's also quite essential as well. So for example, if you're training for a marathon, running the marathon is like the sexy part. The boring part is just waking up and going for a 3-mile jog when it's raining. That's not that glamorous, but it's those parts there that actually allow you then to get to that stage of, now I can do the marathon. And so here are just some quick examples that I've done and from other people that I've done, I've been inspired by, that really help it. And I'll kind of explain a little bit as to why I think these are also really critical and quite helpful there as well. So again, you have just like, and this is not rocket science by any means, but it allows you to really solidify everything that you've been working on, from your discovery, from prioritization, from all those different aspects, and to being able to deliver it. So on the side, you can just see here's like a very quick breakdown. Q1 2020, this is also before I joined. Q2 2022, breaking everything down there. Q3 2022, And you can also have it if you want to on an initiative level, kind of how you want, but just really trying to follow a structure there. And from that, then with each, so to say, initiative that you might be working on, really always state the context. I know it's a bit hard to see, but really provide the context, the who, what, where, when, and why, the KPIs that you're trying to achieve. If you have multiple milestones, break down those milestones and really say, okay, if we do this, this, and this, and these are successful, we go to this next stage. If this is successful and these other two aren't, what do we do there? And try to really formulate all these different angles to it, so that you aren't caught off guard, so to say. And so this is also really helpful when it comes to for yourself, for the team, the engineering team, designers, whomever, to also say, here's the full picture of what we're trying to go for. And then on the other side as well, just an A/B test as well. Again, it's documented on here. But I think, and I'm sure maybe a lot of you have experienced this, you run an A/B test and okay, you have the Jira tickets, and maybe you have a newsletter, maybe there's a PowerPoint, you kind of lose that eventually. Or what's happened to me as well, you join a new organization, you have no idea what tests have been running. Maybe a PM 3 years ago ran the exact same test, you repeat it, same exact failure, whoopsies. And so just to kind of really hammer down on very simple, concrete ways to actually be able to drive forward. Again, it's just really highlighting here's what the test is, here's the KPI that we want to achieve, maybe the country, the data that's backing it up, the status of it if it's done, obviously what the results are, and then also the next steps. And I think this is also something that's very difficult to keep track of if you just are looking at Jira or you're just looking at newsletters. What are the next steps and how do you really follow up with that? Because a test at the end of the day is just one piece and you want to iterate on that. So you really need to see, are we iterating, are we building on top of this or not? So we've kind of covered a little bit of the prioritization and some concrete ways there. We've covered a little bit of the ways in which you can then document that, both from a strategic perspective and then also from more of the operational of the day-to-day, the tests, etc. Now I kind of want to just discuss a bit how this then feeds into the stakeholder management aspect, but more specifically also how to really drive meetings that are effective, which again, a lot of people talk about, but then also how to very easily create actionables as well from that. So maybe just very quickly, I like this GIF as well. I think it's from Shazam. Stakeholder management is the unsung hero of the product manager skill set. So from product school. Again, this is just some effective ways to run the stakeholder meetings, and I'm not going to go into detail about them. A quick Google search will show these, but it's very important that you always really include an agenda, especially when everything is digital. You're going to inevitably have the question, oh, can you hear me? Can you see my screen? You have to do small talk, which at the end of the day also cuts back on the time of the meeting to where, okay, is everyone prepared, right? Have the agenda, have the documentation there. Take 5 to 10 minutes if possible before the meeting starts, which is not always possible, but just to review what you want to achieve, state what you want to achieve, and then actually really create actionables from there. So the thing is, what does it actually look like? For me, again, I'm sure a lot of you also are using Confluence. This looks kind of like very scary. It's not very sexy. It's not very crazy looking. But what's very helpful, though, especially when you have meetings or recurring meetings with your stakeholders, to actually have it documented in kind of a succinct way. Obviously, you can do this for a one-off meeting, but that might be a bit overkill there. But let's say you're working on a project or a big feature, and it's involving multiple stakeholders there, and you have bi-weekly or weekly syncs with them. So really just go in, create a very, very simplified table, have all your calendar weeks there, but really ensure that you have your updates, your questions, your problems, and your next steps there. And really try to fill this in all the time before the meeting, because this will give you one, a structure to how you want to run the meeting, two, a bit of confidence as well. It gets you the buy-in, the trust from the others, like, okay, this person's actually on top of it. And you can always refer back to it to see the progress. Additionally, from the stakeholder side, so this is for product, also include the exact same thing, but for various stakeholders. So whether it's legal or it's online marketing or it's whomever, really include that there too, so that they're also able to contribute to that as well. For me, this has been super helpful for like managing, let's say, bigger projects or big feature releases. And again, I know this is focusing a little on, let's say, the project management side of things and not necessarily the product management side, but in the end as well, you will have to, from let's say a product manager perspective, you are going to be dealing with various stakeholders. You are dependent on that. You need to have the communications, that you need to have the legal backing and all that stuff. And sending an email just won't cut it. And maybe having a Gantt chart's also good. But again, having everything just in one place is very, very, very crucial and critical to being able to easily refer back to that, to always have all your eggs in one basket, to be able to drive the vision that you're trying to do. And one kind of pro tip as well, to really be able to take action on those meetings. And I had to look this up, I think on Reddit or something kind of bizarre, which is a little macro that you can use. So first on your little pages, go ahead and just add a label to the Confluence page. And there's a nice macro that's just called task report. And maybe a lot of you know it, maybe you don't. And this just helps you to kind of create your action items there as well, so that you're actually able to follow up on, oh, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do. This is what we have to do. Here's the deadline. Here's who the owners are or owner is. And to go through at the beginning of that next meeting, what did we achieve and what did we not achieve? Because as I said, again, when you're starting off these meetings, these syncs, you need to achieve, you want to obviously try to achieve something. And this is also a very great way to be able to start off the meeting with, we achieved this, this, and this, and now we want to achieve this, this, and this. So kind of putting everything together. So yeah, I talked about prioritization there, how to concretely do it, from the experiences that I've had, how that's been helpful. So both from the weighted scorecard perspective and also Rice methodology perspective, how that then doesn't end with just, cool, it's prioritized, the backlog is here and it's up and it's down. Rather, how you can then properly document that so you're able to be a bit more strategic. You can refer back to that. You can look at that. You can see what's changed, what hasn't, inform your stakeholders, and then how then you're able to use that documentation, excuse me, to then be able to really drive progress towards achieving that feature or that vision or whatever with your stakeholders, and keeping everyone aligned, and how that then continuously feeds back. Because again, if your stakeholders are trusting you and you are really being able to motivate them, more ideas will come, more perspectives will come, which then leads into better prioritization, which leads to better documentation, which then again leads into the better stakeholder management parts there as well. And so maybe lastly, I just want to say thank you to product people. Thank you to everyone that's joined. And yeah, looking forward to the Q&A section. And I will also go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Hopefully, yeah, we're good on time there. Excuse me there. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, Jonathan. This was a very insightful presentation. And thank you everyone for listening. We're now going to start our Q&A session. You can raise your hand on Zoom or type your questions in the chat and the comment section as well. This goes for all platforms, by the way. And to give you some time to draft your questions, I can go over a couple of more slides where I can talk about product people. You please feel free to write down your questions in the chat. Okay, so here are typical use cases that our team can best fit to your company. One, we help you cover the product management positions. In some cases, like your product manager is going on parental leave or is leaving your company, and the hiring process takes mainly 2 to 9 months. That's where we come in as an interim product manager. We also do product coaching, and we can also help you help you in the discovery sessions of your next impactful product, which you would like to launch. We have done this successfully at many clients such as Zalando, Scout24, and Freeletics. So if any one of you who is interested in our services, please remember, we're always happy to help. And here are some positive feedbacks and testimonials that we have recently got. These are just a few, there are a lot more, but yes, just a few that you can read out. And here's the look of our team. As you can see, we've come from diverse backgrounds, and our team is fully distributed in different parts of the world. You can see at the bottom right corner that we have a place for you. So if you want to join us, Please feel free to apply. We are always looking for product managers at all levels. You can apply through the link on the screen, and I think this will be shared in the chat as well. And now I see we've got some questions. Again, just a reminder, please feel free to raise your hand on Zoom or type your question in the chat or the comment section. This applies to all platforms. Okay, so the first question, Jonathan, for you is a question for calculating the reach within a given feature. This is a question from Thomas, sorry. Do you consider the MVP first iteration or the full scope you have in mind?
Maybe the question I would ask is what is necessarily meant by scope. So maybe you can clarify that. But I think that so it kind of depends on the first iteration of what you mean by that. So an example I can give is I was working on like an app with some friends of mine, and I just started to reach out randomly to a bunch of CEOs and kind of talk to the person about, hey, we have this app and we have this MVP and we already want to kind of iterate on this, et cetera, or we're trying to define the MVP. Can you maybe give us some pointers, all that stuff? And we had already done a little bit of work in the past. We already had that kind of a working app. What he then wound up saying, though, is what is it that you actually want to achieve? So, for example, this particular app, if you go to my LinkedIn, you can actually see it, is actually for condom delivery in Berlin, right? Kind of a funny thing. And this was done before Gorillas, all the whole, quick commerce there. We had the app, but what he wound up saying is what you're trying to find out is, will people purchase a condom or will they purchase a beauty product or whatever? Theoretically, you don't need an application to do that. You could just either quickly make up like a, what is it called? Like an e-commerce website, put up some Facebook ads for $50, see who clicks on what. And then you already know if people are interested or not because you're able to target your specific zip code. You're able to have the demographics that you want to do. You're able to actually figure out a lot of information. So from that side, I think that I wouldn't always say an MVP is necessarily from, let's say, a development perspective, the first iteration that it needs to be. Because you really should just think about what am I trying to figure out and what's the cheapest and easiest way to get there as well. And again, I think this is something that's super interesting because especially for myself, starting off in product management, a lot of the focus is on, okay, the minimal viable product. Good. That doesn't always have to actually be like a mobile app or even a website per se. It can also it can be anything as long as you're able to find out the information to validate your assumption, which is what the MVP is trying to do. Is there a market fit? Are there people interested? Will this lead to anything? So I hope that kind of answers it a little bit in terms of the second part of the question, but maybe in the chat or somewhere else you could build upon the first part since I didn't fully understand that part there.
Thank you for that amazing tip, Jonathan. Okay, we have another question from Katerina. Please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but the question is regarding stakeholder management, apart from transparent and centralized documentation, do you have any other tips?
Yeah, so I think this is also something that I definitely struggle with too a little bit is, okay, besides all that, at the end of the day, people will be confused, people will forget, people are busy, they're not going to click, they're not going to read, they're not going to do a lot of that stuff. So what I think is also very helpful there too is, besides just having another meeting, is taking the time, make a very, very, very quick and simple survey on like Google Docs, send it to those stakeholders that you have these weekly or bi-weekly or monthly syncs with to see what's working. So for example, one thing that I learned at a previous organization when it came to stakeholder management was they actually really need pictures to see of the features, right? You can't just talk about it and then that's it. It's very helpful for them to visualize it, for one example. And I learned this through the survey. Another one is they actually wanted just to have the structure of the meeting based off of initiative. So initiative 1, 2, 3, and this was with marketing people as well. And going through in detail and then having the transition. So I think that's also quite an effective way to be able to understand, just like you would with like an end user, what their needs are, what also works for them as well. And I think that builds a level of trust and you're able to fine tune maybe different meetings per different type of stakeholder there or all the stakeholders that are in the meeting as well.
Awesome. Yep. Okay, one more question from Kata. How do you score estimate when you want to prioritize customer needs, their pain points, and their desires? If estimate work well for the solution, for problem space, estimates are a catastrophe. So what do you want to say about that?
So just to make sure I understand the question is about how to use estimations to actually inform your prioritization. Please
When it
correct me if I'm
comes
wrong.
when it comes to customer needs and their pain points as well as their desires.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So again, just maybe to hopefully for myself also to fully understand it, the question seems to be talking about how do you balance this act between the customer pain points, their needs, and then also from the estimation side as well, because something could be very, very, very impactful there, right? But also could be very, very, very complex. So unfortunately, there is no, let's say, right or wrong when it comes to this. Okay, sorry, right or wrong when it comes to this. Rather, once you have this high estimation there and you know that this customer need or pain point is also very high, try then to also work backwards a bit, which sounds a little ambiguous, but try to also cut the fat off and then see, okay, what is it again that we're really trying to figure out? How does this feature that we're trying to build solve it? So maybe you don't even need to have a fully working feature. Rather, you can say, we'll build this one part here, and then we can use CRM to kind of inform the users more frequently because we introduce this one event that tells the users, hey, by the way, if you need more help, please be directed here, for example. So I think that it's a little bit of a balancing act and really been trying to cut back down so you can reduce the complexity there a little bit. And on the other hand, trying to find workarounds to then reduce the customer pain. One extra thing as well is that estimations aren't always going to be 100% accurate. A small or whatever, something that takes one day can also blow up as well. So taking that as well with a grain of salt is also quite important there. I know that's not the most concrete answer, but maybe we can kind of continue that conversation as well at some point also. I think there's a few hands up, but I'm not sure. Maybe
Akash was first, so please go ahead, Akash.
So thanks for the great presentation, Jonathan. So I have one question regarding what should be the approach I should follow to land my first PM job. To give a background, I am a recent MBA graduate, and before that, I worked as a software developer and as a technical support engineer for around 3 years. And during my I did a couple of freelance projects where I led a team of 3 to 4 developers and developed products for clients, like
yeah,
freelance.
that's a very good question. So maybe I can answer that through my own path a bit. So I actually did not study anything remotely related to what I was doing. It was in the humanities, right? What I would suggest to do is how I kind of quote unquote cracked into it was I got a job somewhere doing online marketing and an opportunity arose. And I actually shadowed a PM that has actually given a presentation as well on product people and was able to get in that way. I think one of the best approaches though is either try to get in already into the organization and then express yourself to the person, to your manager, or to whomever that you're interested in it, and then shadow another product manager is kind of like a really good approach. And there's also a video, I think, I forget who it's by, or maybe it's a TikTok, and they say, everyone wants to be a PM for Twitter. Well, if you want to be a PM for Twitter and make whatever, $250,000 a year in San Francisco, a better approach might be get in on some, let's say, smaller aspect of it that's a little bit more tangible, and then try to go horizontal there. Another approach, though, I think that's also quite helpful would also then be just to, I don't want to say cold call or contact people via LinkedIn, but really try to say, hey, I'm trying to crack into this. Can I get more assistance, et cetera, and then build a network up that way. I'm not sure, 100% sure how often that will work, but I've had people reach out to me as well, and they wound up landing a job also in my organization. I think the third way as well, and this is kind of, let's say, the maybe not the most politically correct version of it, is spam it out there, cast a wide net, so to say, and then at the end of the day, you'll kind of read some books about how to crack, so to say, the PM interview, and you'll get far enough along the interview process to then see, and you'll get some of these case studies. You'll then see, okay, which companies did I get another interview for, which not, and then what are my weaknesses, and then try to hone in on that and then continue the process. So those are kind of 3 different approaches I could provide there that I think all work, just different capacities and also depending upon how you want to handle it. But for me, honestly, like a great thing that I try to do as well in general, I think it's good is look up case studies and just see what your weaknesses are, and then try to build up from there as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was a very good question, Akash. And Akash, please feel free to apply to product people as well. We have some positions open. You can see them on our website. Okay, we have another question from Isosa. She says that some stakeholders I've worked with are very notorious and do not look at the meeting notes or the documentation. How do you think we should encourage them to actively refer to your documentation?
Yeah. So there's kind of two approaches. There's one, just yell, which I don't recommend. I think what you can also do to really solve that is maybe also have a retrospective with some of your stakeholders there, and also express the concern there as well. And I think that's something that I've done in the past, especially when it came to, okay, maybe I messed up, and I also need to have some of that insights there, but also a space in which I can then provide my feedback in terms of what I expect. I think another approach can be, you can also escalate the issue a little bit if it's possible. And then kind of like the last one really is to privately take them aside and say, hey, we need to actually discuss this. This isn't how we do it. And really kind of put the case out there. I wouldn't say put anyone on blast in the public setting. I wouldn't also say, hey, you guys are lazy or anything like that. But those can be some approaches. Additionally, I think it's also really good to try to end some of your meetings as well by getting a rating of like, was it worth it? So it was 1 to 5, 5 being, yeah, this was the best time value ever, and 1 being horrible. And maybe what you can realize is either the meeting itself doesn't go in the direction, or even from you find out, okay, the documentation that you're providing also might not be structured as they want or they need. So it kind of is also both, in the sense of maybe they need to work on it, but also you might also need to work on that from your perspective. But I think those would be a few different ways. I know for sure I also suffered through this, and at times as well, I probably also lash out a little bit more than I necessarily should. And maybe sometimes you also have to play bad cop as well, right? But I think those other approaches are the more fruitful ones, especially when it comes to really collaboration with your stakeholders there. So hopefully that helps to answer it a bit there as well.
Great tips there, Jonathan.
Very good question. Very good question.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more question from Kata. Yes, she has her hand raised. Please, Kata, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, it's about the response you gave me about the prioritization how do you include the estimations in the prioritization of pain points or the problem space? I didn't feel that you actually got my question, so that's why I raised the hand. So from my experience, when you try to prioritize the problem space, because that's what I do first, maybe I think you approach it differently. But first, before talking about solutions, I'm trying to figure out which are the biggest problems that can, if fixed or solved, would get to the outcome that I'm trying to get to, right?
Yeah.
So then you can get like 50 problems or 20 problems or whatever. Then at that moment, you don't have any solutions for those problems. So the trap that I noticed most of the product people are doing, they are going to the engineers and say, how big is this or how complex is this to build? And you don't have any solution. So it's impossible for an engineer to give a decent estimate, not to talk about an estimate. So usually what happens, that's why I said it's a catastrophe, is that what happens, the engineers are giving a finger in the air estimate.
Yep.
And that translates into a feature roadmap,
yep,
which translates into a big mess along the year, because everybody has some expectations and everybody doesn't get them because we didn't prioritize based on reality. We prioritize based on perception.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see. Thank you for clarifying that. So I think, I'm not sure this will be the answer per se, but so maybe for those out there, I think, again, what it's really focusing on is understanding the problem, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Katja, but understanding what the problem is, what is the most important problem, how might we impact that, but not having a solution yet either, right? And then conflating, then having a solution already in place and trying then to get an estimation to kind of squeeze it into the roadmap to work on something that might not have actually been the real problem from the get-go, just to make sure I understood.
Yeah, so basically putting an estimation and prioritize the problem based on an estimation, which it's relevant because you don't know the solution, first of all. So
so I think this is when it comes down to doing very good discovery work. And what I mean by discovery work is not just having a workshop with a bunch of people in there, not just doing user surveys, and all these are good, or whatever, audience interviews or any of this stuff, but doing very, very, very deep dives into the data on the one hand and really trying to understand that, and then also on the market in general, both in terms of what is this, what's the numbers that you're trying to achieve, is this something that we can compare to other companies, and then also looking holistically at the market as well, and really trying to actually understand a problem that's there, seeing if there's potential there, but not necessarily having a solution. So I can give maybe one example, and I'm hoping that this tries to answer a little bit, because I think it's good to give concrete examples. So a while back, one of the goals that we had, increase retention by X amount of percentage points, right, by the end of the quarter. So you can say, oh, if we add this one feature and this feature is super small, this will do this, this, and this. In reality, it's also just about look at the data, see what that is, see how that compares, see what typically it is for retention, for example. Look to do some benchmarks there. Come up with, okay, if we increase or improve this metric here, what kind of impact would that have? And then you can start to also ideate in terms of solutions. The problem should always be first and foremost, I think, as you also mentioned, but have the good foundation of the discovery work to see, is this problem, one, is it even worth it? How many people are affected? What are the numbers that we should be having? Why is this a problem? And then trying to go step by step by step to understand what could potential solutions be. And I think this is also what I referred a little bit to in the presentation, in terms of you have all these, let's say, all these problems there. You've done some digging, you know, these three are the top 3 ones. How can we best approach those? What features do we have that are linked to those areas that we can also improve upon? And then come up with a bunch of different milestones. If we achieve this, this, and this, we know we can go to this next level, etc. But also making sure that you're including everyone in there to have all those ideas, to then be able to have a whole bucket to then kind of prioritize, but making sure at every single point that you're trying to actually address that problem from the beginning, and not just having a solution from the get-go that you assume or hope that it will actually kind of change the metric there. Because at the end of the day, most of the times it's kind of the small things that actually do it. So if you look at, most of the times it's actually very, very, very small aspects that actually will lead incrementally to the change that you want, as opposed to one kind of moonshot feature, at least from my experience that I've had in general. I hope that answers it. Feel free to also write it. I can try to maybe go into more details as well.
I think it makes sense, but I think that's what I wanted to highlight, the fact that there are 2 steps in this prioritization. One is the prioritization of the problem, and you need to discover the problem and do proper discovery, as you mentioned, on the problem, which doesn't include solutions. And then there's the second step. Once you pinpoint and focused on one problem, then, or 2 problems, you can find solutions, and then you prioritize the solution in context, because you cannot do the discovery for solutions for all the problems at the same time. You have to focus.
That 100%, that is 100%, like, totally agree there. I think in the presentation I kind of skipped over entirely the discovery process, but I think the discovery at the end of the day is also obviously one of the key elements to it. And when I say discovery, again, it should be detailed, have a 40-page document that you've written for yourself to understand fully the problem statement that you're actually trying to solve, without necessarily having a solution there, or you can just have ideas there. But totally agree with you in terms of, before getting to that, obviously you're needing to have to understand the problem without a solution in mind, to try to cram it into there.
Awesome. Thank you, Carter. Thank you, Jonathan. We just have a few more minutes left. One last question before we wrap up. So Jonathan, okay, I think we have a hand raised as well. Ankit, just please go ahead and ask your questions. We have five more minutes.
Thank you. I have been preparing for product management job for last 1 month and taking online courses and everything. The problem is I have been working in hardware industries for last 1.5 year and finance, and I'm from mechanical engineering. So, but these courses are showing the product management for software applications and all, and they have and the instructors have suggested me to make a demonstration project and do project related to any product. The problem comes when I want to apply this what I have learned in product management into hardware. So what would you suggest to begin with?
How you apply product management skills into like hardware?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So for this, I can't really help too much because I don't have experience when it comes to like the hardware side of things. And I would imagine also at least how like the, let's say, the more digital version or software oriented version of product management is really focused on is this quote unquote iterative approach. And I don't necessarily know how that necessarily works directly from a hardware perspective because I just don't have any experience in that. So it's a little bit out of the scope of my knowledge. So I don't think I'm going to be able to provide anything useful there. Yeah, so maybe I don't know if there's resources either on that. And again, yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to provide too much insights there. I think in the end, though, sort of say let's say the product mindset would still be there and applicable. Because obviously you're still going through the same things. You're still trying to understand problems. You're still trying to build a solution for that in a somewhat simple way. You're still trying to organize all the different elements there. You're still trying to understand, is this a real problem for our end customer or end user or whoever? But when it comes to like the detail parts of then how you can apply what you're learning onto it in like a very concrete way, or how you could be able to get a product job in more of a hardware focused area, I don't think I can help too much on that side, but I do think there's going to be parallels because at the end, it's a mindset as opposed to a hard kind of science behind it.
thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Jonathan, for answering the question. Andrea, we have some more time to take one more question because we have Rafael who has her hand raised. Okay, Rafael, please go ahead and ask your question. Rafael?
All right. Thank you very much. Good day, everybody. Thank you so much for this session. That was an awesome presentation. All right. You've shared a lot of value. I really appreciate it. So my question is, when the product is ready, its development is complete, and it's time to, hit the market, right? To launch. And how would you advise should be the best way to meet with stakeholders in marketing, to have a meeting in marketing, to hold a very productive and successful meeting in marketing, to pass down the whole product to them so that you can have a product launch kind of meeting and for the success of the product.
Yeah. So yeah, so good question there. Ironically enough, I just had to literally do this a month and a half ago, give or take, as well. So I think
same here.
Oh yeah, there we go. I think one thing first and foremost, obviously, just have a kickoff meeting well before you're gonna launch, well before. Get everyone involved there. In terms of, okay, this is what we're working on. Make sure you have everyone there. And again, in the presentation when I showed this calendar week stuff, this is again on this, let's say, more project management aspect of it, but really try to keep everyone updated and informed along the way in terms of the status, what the issues are, etc. But also really try to make sure that they're providing you with updates too, in terms of, let's say they're going to have a hype campaign that goes out 2 weeks before it launches, right? Let's just say everything is timed perfectly, cool. You should also know that they're going to be sending that email out there, just so in case you need to have tracking on something, or in case you need to know how much traffic is going from the email into the application, into the web page, or whatever. That's very important. If they have different trigger points as well, you need to be able to be informed there too. And so I think starting off early, having continuous syncs, whether it's bi-weekly or weekly or monthly, is also very helpful. and then really try to have those action points documented down. And also even more on top of that, once those are completed, for your own sanity, have again a project plan in Confluence that kind of lists out, here's what they're planning, here's when they're planning it, also here is the different trigger points or whatever, so that you all are on the same page. And then I would also suggest then, honestly, what I did in the past one is for myself, and I know I'm talking a lot about Confluence here, but in this particular case, I just created a bunch of Jira tickets and just put them to myself to go check up on it. And so that we all knew, okay, this is the launch date, this is what we want to do. This is the trigger point, it all works. We kind of QA'd it as well together. And then we knew the launch date. Okay, now I have everything documented. I know, okay, a day before they're going to send out this email. The next day, there's going to be the welcome lane for these users that will teach them this, this, and this. X amount of days later, they'll get this. We'll plan for then a month later, we'll kind of additional pop-ups or anything like that. So I think that's how my approach would be: is start really early. Make sure you have like very frequent syncs there that are productive. Following up, understanding what they're working on, documenting that down, and then also having a big QA as well. Just to go over everything again, and then everything should kind of be good to go, ideally. This at least is the experience that I've had. There's definitely some misses as well along the way, but I think that this can also really help to reduce the complexity of being able to have a product launch after the development is complete, because they've been with you the entire way during the delivery and development process.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you everyone for joining. For Jonathan, especially you, for sharing your insights with us. And for all of you on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, thank you again for joining us. If you have any other questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us through different channels. And see you next time. Take care, everyone.